Hello everyone and welcome. I really hope you've had a good half-term break, a relaxing break in the sunshine. We're back to thinking about media studies, and I'm going to introduce the new topic that we're going to be studying over the next couple of weeks, which is advertising and marketing. It's a pretty exciting topic to be studying, mainly because you're all familiar with advertising and marketing. So it should be interesting to you. You should know a lot about it already. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to reflect on something that came up over the half term, which you may have seen yourself. With the coronavirus crisis, news is becoming more and more important. How you receive your news is also becoming important as well. So I just thought I'd show you something very quickly here, which sort of illustrates how the news can be skewed and changed depending on which news source you choose to get your information from. So this is a photograph which was put on the front page of a national newspaper. Shows a teacher reading to some students. This seems like a pretty normal photograph. The Daily Mail decided to use this particular photograph to illustrate the point that they wanted children to go back to school pretty swiftly. And they decided to run with this headline: "Let our teachers be heroes." So by now you know a lot about the Daily Mail. You know that it's a right-leaning mid-market tabloid run by the DMGT group, fronted by Lord Rothermere. It has Conservative and Tory party support, and it supports a conservative agenda. But you might want to consider here why they've decided to use this photo, and why particularly they have decided to crop out some of the students. Now, if I flick between these two photos, some cynical people might say that they've decided to crop out the black students because that sort of represents the populace and the demographic of their chosen target audience. Perhaps the less cynical might just say, well, it's a black typeface and black font. Maybe that would have clashed with the black student here that they decided to crop out. I'll leave that up to you to decide, but I think it's very interesting that the Daily Mail have decided to do this, to crop out some of the students. Have a consideration here, or a thought here, about what the message is they're trying to put across, and the media language they are using to do so. So back to today's studying then. This is going to be a pretty heavy note-taking session, so you're going to need to have a means to take some notes, whether that's in a notebook using pen and paper, or whether that's going to be on a new blog post. This is going to be a 2-lesson video. So the first lesson is going to be you annotating a advert, which I'll go through with you, and the second lesson is you going to be choosing your own advert to annotate using the codes and conventions which we'll go through today. But I thought today would be useful just to give you an overview of what the question will look like, the format in which it will be shown to you, and what will be expected of you in the answers that you give. Now, these particular adverts here, these three, may not mean a lot to you right now, but they certainly will become very familiar as we go through the course. So, with your notes ready, let's make a start. This is the second part of paper 1. So the first part is about news, and that's the big section there with 4 individual questions. This section, section B, there are 2 questions for this section. One will be worth 10 marks and one will be worth 15 marks. So it's 25 marks altogether for this particular section. It's 35% of the exam paper. What it asks you to do is to focus on media language and representation, and asks you to consider how and why media language is used by media producers to create meaning and construct various representations of events, issues, individuals, and social groups within advertising and marketing. So the questions are on advertising, and they are similar to those for the big issue and music videos. Just to let you know that this section you will only be asked to answer 2 of the 3 sections you have studied. So music videos, big issue, or advertising and marketing. So only 2 out of those 3 will be asked. 1 will be unseen and the other will be seen. So bear that in mind as you come to answer these questions. And don't worry, we haven't had a proper look at the big issue yet. That's all still to come. And when I say unseen, what I mean is that you may be given an unseen advert and asked to analyze it live in your examination about the codes and conventions, why they are useful for interpreting representations, and how the media language has been used to reinforce the stereotypes or the countertypes of that particular product. So, as previously mentioned, the frameworks to be analysed are going to be media language and also representation. It's important to notice at this stage that there's no theory required, which should be good news to the majority of you. So the media language and representation frameworks, remember, media language are just the things that the producer uses in order to get their meanings across. So we're talking about camera shots, mise-en-scène, and how the elements are put together to form the meanings that you interpret. And how does it incorporate the meanings that the producer wants to suggest as well? Representation, so which groups are identified? Are there positives and negative stereotypes within the meanings that are being represented by the producer? And what conclusions can we reach about these groups? It's probably worthwhile mentioning at this stage that the adverts that we're going to be analysing are all print adverts. So there's no moving image adverts, there's no TV adverts per se. So these are print adverts. Obviously, you couldn't have a moving image advert on a paper examination, so it's a print advert. And the social and cultural context. So we know that contexts are so important with understanding any media product. In this respect, we're thinking about how does the fact that we are in a civilized 21st century Western democracy, how does that make us interpret the adverts that we see in a different way to other people around the world? So how does living in the Western world in the 21st century affect our understanding of the products? So with the adverts, there are set case studies that we are going to look at. If you remember, for your music video, you looked at Burn the Witch in Heaven for music video, and you looked at Minecraft for your video game, for example. For adverts, we're going to be looking at these 3 adverts. So this is for Lucozade, for Shelter, and for Old Spice. We're looking at these 3 print adverts. And don't worry if you don't know anything about Lucozade or anything about Shelter or Old Spice. That's the purpose of these lessons, to get you familiar with these products. Okay, and just to look at what the question would look like, just so we know where we're aiming towards, it might look something like this. Explain the significance of challenging and or subverting genre conventions. Refer to the Old Spice Smell Like a Man set product advert you have studied. So essentially this is asking you to have a look at the genre conventions of adverts. Think about adverts that challenge and challenge or subvert genre conventions, and then refer to the case study that you have looked at. It's a 10-mark question in this respect, but it could be a 15-mark question. The 15-mark questions are likely to be unseen adverts, but we'll talk through that in more detail later on. The question could refer to Old Spice, Lucozade, or Shelter adverts, or an unseen advert. So we're going to be looking in detail at the 3 case studies, but do bear in mind that we are going to be looking at unseen adverts as well, which is why these lessons on understanding advertising as an industry will be quite important to you. So we're all familiar with adverts and advertising. They are prolific within our day-to-day lives. In fact, I imagine by the time you've watched this video, regardless of what time of day it is, you would have seen between 40, 50, 60 different adverts, whether that's on YouTube, whether looking out the window at a billboard on the side of a bus, or watching TV, or on banners on your phone, wherever it might be. So advertising is a huge part of our lives. But what's the difference between advertising versus marketing? So advertising is the process of making a product known to its market. So it's promoting the product itself, it's promoting its brand, it's promoting the ideal behind the product. Whereas marketing covers the aspects of getting the product to the market itself. And advertising is one of the components of marketing. So marketing is an umbrella term for the pushing out of the product to the market, and one of the ways in which you can do that is through advertising. Okay, so with media language, there are obviously a lot of bits of terminology that you need to be aware of. You don't necessarily need to write all these down, but these are the things that you need to be aware of when you're talking about media language, specifically in terms of analysing a print advert. Colour, the type of shot that's used, the angle, focus, depth of field, mise-en-scène, realism, that means is it realistic? Does it actually represent real life? Does it have a story to it? Is there a narrative? The use of copy, how many words there are, the font design, the size of the font, what sort of font is used, and the layout, how it actually looks on the page. Now, although we don't need to look at audience specifically, you can't really look at media language and representation without thinking about the audience. So we need to be asking ourselves, who is the audience for the advert? How do we know? What might other audiences make of it? How is the audience positioned? How are we supposed to be feeling when we see this particular advert? Representation, what issues or values are being represented. Think about the CAGE mnemonic here. Remember, CAGE stands for class, age, gender, ethnicity, and disability. Which individuals are presented. Importantly, which individuals aren't being represented within these adverts and what messages might be being constructed there. Okay, so that's quite a lot of chat from me. Let's have a look at this advert. So hopefully your teachers will have sent you out a slide with this advert. It's for Miss Dior. What I need you to do is have this in front of you and start to annotate this as I go through it. So have the slide out in front of you, whether you've printed it out or whether it's on your page, and let's annotate this together. So the first thing we need to look at is the words. So we have a slogan underneath the main title, which is a different typeface, and what would you do for love? It's quite shouty typeface in caps there. It's a question, and it also links with the TV advert, which I'm going to ask you to watch in a second. The title of Miss Dior may suggest the audience is a younger audience. There's a logo there, and that is the logo of Miss Dior, and it tells the audience the brand of the product. In this case, it's a well-known luxury brand, and the typeface suggests that luxury. The calligraphy used here to represent the elegance of the brand itself. Okay, we have Natalie Portman here. So it's quite usual to have a celebrity endorsement on adverts. It's typical for a fragrance or a sports drink. You're unlikely to see a celebrity endorsement on a charity advert, generally speaking, because charities tend to invoke fear as opposed to aspiration. The aspiration here is to look like, or to be a little bit more like Natalie Portman. You need to buy this product. Costume and makeup, so there's a seductive pose here. This is all part of mise-en-scène. Natalie Portman there wrapped in a bed sheet. There's sexual connotations. It's alluring to men and it's challenging to women. So I'm going to pause this video here. I'm going to carry on in the next video, which will be linked straight after this. There's a few more bits that I'd like you to annotate, and I don't want to rush it, so I'll be putting this in a new video right now.